Okay. Welcome everyone. Welcome to this presentation about the new services that we've been launching in the expertise team. I'm really happy to be here with Gilles today to present you the genesis of the project and the reasons why we've decided to generate new services within the expertise. And Gilles will lay out at some point a concrete example of what we did with the strategic supply chain one. So today we are going to see what are the usual hurdles when you do an implementation, what is the philosophy behind the service that we developed. I'll give you some hints on how you can go further if you are interested in these kind of services, and of course we will explain with Gilles what concretely it means to implement and to make the analysis of strategic supply chain within your company. But I would like to start the presentation by a first question. A very easy one. Have you ever struggled with your implementation? And whether you are an Odoo partner, an Odoo customer, or a potential customer willing to onboard on Odoo, I'm sure that the answer is yes. And I guess, Gilles, that you also had issues in your own implementations, right?
Yeah, unfortunately I did.
Yes, I think the answer to that question is yes from everyone. And of course, if we really look at the root causes when you have troubles in your implementation, of course, even if you have an in-depth knowledge of Odoo, even if you have a proven implementation methodology, you'll have, for instance, project management related issues. In that case, when you have project management related issues, you can leave it, of course, to the SMEs and large accounts teams. But here in the expertise team, we believe that there are some topics that really deserve our attention. For instance, we believe that from time to time the needs are badly expressed or are not well defined. You can have a customer coming to you asking for a full make-to-order strategy, for instance. And when you dig deeper, you understand that they want to put at work a lean strategy. And in a lean strategy, you know that from time to time you need to create buffer stocks at different steps in the supply chain, and it doesn't translate directly into a full make-to-order strategy in Odoo. So sometimes the needs are badly defined, the processes can be blurry, and also from time to time the customer believes that the software will solve all the problems in the company, and they don't put any strategic intent into it. So of course all this will lead to unstable foundation, and unstable foundation for the implementation itself. I'm definitely sorry for my Italian friends, but here it's a good picture that explains that if you have wrong foundation, then in the end your project is not leaning in the right direction. So of course having a stable foundation means that you have clear consequences on your project. Besides having tricky configurations to make, you'll have badly designed developments on the project, which leads actually to high maintenance. It's difficult to maintain the stability of the software. It's difficult to move from one version to another when you do an upgrade. And having a high maintenance prevent actually the customer from fully benefiting from the features of the software. And usually when the customer does not benefit from the features of the software, he asks for more developments, and you are entering a vicious circle here when you actually want to do more developments. So we thought, okay, there is something to do about it, there is something unique to create here. And what we were sure here is that we do not want actually to act like traditional players. We believe that traditional players fall into two main categories: the business consulting firms on the one hand, that are very expensive, that have low IT skills, that are not directed towards the implementation of the software. And they don't have very practical recommendations or operational ones. And on the other hand, you have IT consulting firms that are reseller implementers of ERP that are really focusing on the functional analysis part. And we thought, okay, there is probably an extra player that needs to bridge the gap between the functional and the business analysis part. So we thought, okay, what we actually want to be and to do is to be that extra midfield player in the game. That means that we want to actually bridge the gap between the functional and the business part. And here at Odoo, with the expertise team, we believe that we have the ability to do that. We have the ability to do that because we have experts that know the software very well. They have, of course, connections with the R&D department. They have extensive project experience, and at the same time, they have undisputed business skills. So they have the ability to do that bridge between the functional and the business part. So, as I said, we really want to focus on the business and not on the functional analysis. So we are not going to translate the business need of the customer into configuration, into an actual operating system. What we actually want to do is to go beyond Odoo. We want to reshape the need itself. We want to go at the core of the implementation. And we will do that by checking what is done in the company. So we will help understand the business, we will bring best practices, and we will help to adapt, redefine or standardize some processes, and we will also try to explain why some things are done. So we want to put some strategic considerations in the analysis. A good example of that, for instance, is the new service that we are launching on the search engine optimization on SEO. Usually when you do an implementation, a functional one, you will explain to the customer how the SEO tool on the Odoo website works, and then you will help them to enter the keywords on their different web pages. Here what we really want to do is to understand the company's market, the positioning that they want to achieve, help them build a strategy, and define the keywords list that they have then to implement onto the website. So we really want to go into the strategy and into the deeper business analysis with the customer. So you have to understand that we have developed services that are complementary to the implementation ones that we already offer here at Odoo with the Quick Start and the MMC team, meaning that we have services that either comes before the project or the ROI starts. And also we have some services that will come after the implementation, like the business intelligence one. So we really believe that we have complementary services to the implementation ones. So if you want to go further on the different services that we have developed, you had a talk this morning that you can rewatch from Hugo and Edwige. Tomorrow in the morning you'll have one from Hugo and Richard in the morning on the business intelligence service, and then later on in the afternoon you'll have a talk from Simon and Alexandre on the search engine optimization if you are interested. So you understand that what we really want to do is to design this service for SMEs, like Odoo does for the product, like the Quick Start team does for the implementation part. And we believe that it's mostly designed for SMEs that don't have any in-house capability or expertise in the field. So that's really our target audience, our focus here for the service. We might extend it later on to larger accounts, but first we would like to do it for SMEs. So as a recap, as I said, we don't want to act like traditional players. We really want to go beyond Odoo, go into the business analysis, act before end, with Odoo in mind, of course, and we believe that we have the ability to do so thanks to the expertise team, because it's a multidisciplinary one. So now I will let Gilles explain in a more concrete way what it means with the strategic supply chain service.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. I obviously concur with everything that's been said here, and now I will illustrate that with our new supply chain service. When we make implementations with our SMEs, with our customers, through the time we have observed actually that often SMEs lack of supply chain expertise in-house. And actually this can be because they maybe started small in a garage with 2 or 3 people, then the business goes well and they grow, they hire one other operator, another one, then they buy a small warehouse with other operators, and they end up with 10 or 15 operators working in a small warehouse. But they keep managing the supply chain, the processes, based on common sense and intuition rather than on data and best practices. And this is not without consequences. First, there will be inefficient processes doing that. If you don't have an experienced manager, because maybe you didn't have the time or the money to hire him, maybe then the processes can be improved, can be made more efficient. That will also result in longer lead times, more time to receive items, manipulate in the warehouse, pick, deliver to the customer. That will waste ultimately resources, time from operators, money, space in the warehouse. This ends up with a cost of poor supply chain performance, which leads to a competitive disadvantage with the peers, which is obviously a problem. But the lack of supply chain expertise will also result in some troubles, in some consequences for the ERP, for the Odoo implementation. When the processes are not clear or not efficient, as a consultant, we will have to challenge the client more. This will take time which needs to be paid. Maybe it will also result in poor developments because we need to make specific developments for a strange behavior of a specific need of the customer on which maybe we don't agree as supply chain experts. And in the end, the ERP benefits will be lower and there will be a higher risk of implementation failure. So this is the problem we have faced so far.
So if I understand right, Gilles, actually having an inefficient supply chain means that not only the customer is hurt, but also Odoo, right? That's what you mean here.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
Okay.
Actually, we are hurt as a service provider, but the customer is also hurt. And when we put ourselves in the shoes of the customer, we try to see, but what can they do? Who can they turn to get some help? And actually, the answer is not that obvious, because they might want to turn themselves to traditional consulting firms, but these would be probably too high level, too expensive, too long projects. They could also turn to ERP pure integrators, but these would maybe not be experts in supply chain management. And so we had the feeling at Odoo that we were in an ideal position actually to offer some business guidances while having in mind that behind there will be an implementation of an ERP, of Odoo. And so we can really match the gap between traditional consulting firms and pure ERP integrators. We can do this because we have two things. We have experience. In our team of supply chain experts, we have more than 10 people who have all worked on dozens and dozens of projects, on tricky inventory manufacturing projects, who are used to have that kind of problematics. We also have expertise. We have a background in supply chain management. We have people who have worked for industry leaders such as L'Oréal Paris, such as GSK. We have PhD in supply chain management. We have people certified EPIC, certified Toyota. And so we really have everything we need to provide such business service. We are really happy to present today here this new service which we have called Strategic Supply Chain. The objective of this service is twofold. First, we want to focus on cutting the supply chain expenses from the customer. We will focus on the business. We don't speak about Odoo so far. Once we have made the supply chain more efficient, we will have stronger foundations. And the second benefit will be achieved, which is securing the implementation. If the foundations are stable, we can have a faster implementation, a cheaper implementation, a less risky implementation, which is beneficial for the customer and for the ERP integrator or Odoo in our case. How can we reach this output? We have set up a methodology in 3 steps. The first step is evaluating the current situation. The second one will be analyzing the information we will have received from the customer, and finally, we will improve the current situation with an action plan. Let me dive into this methodology. For the first step, we start with the evaluation. We need to know in which company we put our feet. We need to know what's the level of complexity, to know what kind of advices we will need to provide. For that, we will also make a maturity scan. A maturity scan is a tool that is coming from the reference book, Highly Competitive Warehouse Management, which is from JP Vandenberg. Actually, this tool allows us, it's a kind of a survey that allows to estimate what is the current level of maturity of the warehouse. Depending on the current level of maturity of the warehouse, we can try to set up different advices, options to make the warehouse evolve towards a higher level of maturity. Once we have made this first assessment, we will analyze, we will audit the different process flows, business flows of the customer to try to find where there are sources for improvement, to try to see where there are bottlenecks, pain points. This is very important. We need to make some scoping. We don't pretend that we will completely optimize the supply chain. We have a focused and efficient service. We want to try to find the bottlenecks where we can have the most added value, such that with 20% of the effort of a typical consulting service, we can extract only 80% of the value. This is the scoping, and we need to agree that with the customer, such that we are all on the same lines. once we have agreed with the customer on these bottlenecks, this main scope of action, we will start the analysis of the bottlenecks. And for that, we will basically apply two tools. The first tool would be the industry best practices. There are some practices in the industry which are used by all industry leaders and which can be applied for many companies, for most of the companies in the world. These can be, for example, well-designed KPIs, an ABC classification to make sure that the most strategic products are located in the most strategic locations. The second tool that we use to improve the bottlenecks would be processes reshaping. We need to analyze the processes which are the bottlenecks, and we try to improve these by adding an operation, removing an operation, combining several operations. For example, if the customer is making some inefficient single picking, then we can suggest to make wave picking or cluster picking, for example. And finally, the fruit of this analysis should be an action plan. An action plan composed of practical recommendations that are easy to implement for the customer. These recommendations would be of two types, either the generic ones, if they come from industry best practices, applicable for plenty of companies, or more specific recommendations, if it comes from the improvement of the customer specific flows. Okay? So I think now, I hope at least, that you have a better view of what we can do, what we want to achieve with this service. But how does it work in practice? First, it will be conducted only by supply chain experts. This is very important because when we start an implementation, you implement many applications and the consultant or the consulting team cannot be expert in everything. So here we want to make sure that the challenge of the supply chain, of the processes, is made by an expert, someone used to that kind of field. Then the service is focused, is concentrated. We just take 1 month between the time we receive the information from the customer and we deliver the action plan. Another critical point is the timing. We want to schedule this service right before the implementation. We want to have stable foundations for the implementation, and so we need to make the implementation right after revamping the supply chain. If we would have made it before the implementation, we would have to change again the implementation, which would not be optimal, obviously. And finally, very concretely, this service is about, the cost would be 50 hours of consultancy of SuccessPack, which corresponds more or less to 5,000 euros. This is the cost for an SME with one warehouse and 5 or 6 processes in the warehouse. If the supply chain complexity increases, the price, the cost would increase in parallel. This is very important to stress that this is very affordable even for SMEs. We want to make sure that everyone can afford this because our objective is not actually to make money on the service. It's really to make sure that we have a smooth implementation, that the companies will fully exploit Odoo and will be fully satisfied and remain on Odoo for a long period of time. I will leave the responsibility to Michael to close this session.
Yeah, thank you, Gilles. I hope that you better understand what we want to actually do with this new service, especially in strategic supply chain. Indeed, I will conclude by saying that we really want all the services that we are developing, of course, to be pragmatic, meaning that we don't want any bullshit inside. We want to make it at reach for SMEs, we want to make it affordable. And of course, for us, it's very important to make no trade-off on the quality of the services that we are offering. So if we want to combine, on the one hand, the affordability, and on the other hand, the quality, as Gilles explained during the explanation here, we really want to focus on the essentials, meaning that we will apply the NT20 principle by looking at 20% of the problematic processes or bottlenecks that will actually bring 80% of the value in the end from the recommendations and the analysis itself. So it's really important for us to have that focus and to have that 80-20 principle applied in the analysis. So if you are interested by the services, you can of course here scan a QR code that will send you to an URL that will have to be activated tomorrow. But you can meet us at the product booth from the inventory and manufacturing team. But of course, the most important part here would be to go on the pad and ask any of the questions that you might have. So you have the QR code here or the URL that you can type in, and you can type your question. We will leave you a few minutes because I forgot to mention it at the very beginning. and then we are ready to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Nice service.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is the service, maybe I'll start with a question since
Yeah.
we're waiting on the audience. Is the service only available for Odoo direct services, or also maybe partners can hire you guys? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, very good question. So as I said at the beginning, we really want first the service to be directed towards our regular customers, I would say, like with the direct sales and the quick start team. Maybe we might expand it a bit later on larger accounts, but we want first to target SMEs to really build something simple actually and affordable, and we believe then that we can apply that to larger accounts. But for sure, if there are some partners in the room that are interested maybe to launch that type of service, we can discuss it definitely, and we could also be there for them to complement their implementation services. So if some partners in the room are interested by this type of service, we are definitely open to discuss it and maybe to start a collaboration actually on that part.
Yes. Because as a partner manager, well, I see a lot of partners sometimes struggle with it
Yeah.
because they don't have that expertise in-house.
Yeah.
And they depend a lot on Odoo to offer that, so that may be a really good one.
Yeah.
And most of the partners, like from my side, concentrate on SMEs.
Yeah,
A little,
indeed, indeed.
Not the really large ones, but the little ones.
Yeah.
So that would be really great.
Yeah.
Oh, we have some questions
Ah.
coming in, guys.
Okay.
Will the project be implemented by the same people, or is it split between implementation and strategy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think there will be no rule, so it's
Yeah.
not going to be maybe always the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is not necessarily to that the person that will make this analysis, this supply chain service, will also be the person who will implement the project, because then it becomes too complex and we cannot mobilize our experts on long projects every time we have to make the supply chain service.
At least one thing for sure, it's not a necessary condition actually to have the experts who perform the analysis to be on the implementation project. That's a possibility, but that's not a necessary condition.
So we do a good handover.
Yeah, we do a handover for sure, yeah.
In how much time do you expect the customer adapt their processes before Odoo implementation?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on the recommendations, and also, as Gilles showed at the beginning, the maturity of the supply chain. So if we realize that the maturity of the supply chain is quite low according to our analysis grid, then it will take, of course, a few months probably to adapt, physically speaking, the supply chain and the processes, and also maybe sometimes you have to develop new procedures, you have to change things physically before you can actually start the implementation. So depending on the maturity at which you are positioned, then of course it will take a bit more time if you are low in the grid, I would say.
And is this service already available like from today on? Or
Yeah, it's available from today on, yeah. Same for the SEO, digital marketing and business intelligence one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know this term, but a big certification your experts hold.
I think the Apix one. Okay, I think there is the generic one, the CPIM, I think, and there is the CLTD as well, more towards transportation.
Okay, and they can ask for a certain one or something, or how does it?
Yes, if there is a need from a customer, of course, they can ask for a certain person certified in a specific area. Yeah.
Perfect, guys. Thank you very much. That
Okay.
was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.